So before I introduce the Discovery Cafe for the people who are new, just a quick, quick but deep prayer for all beings. I think the purpose of the Discovery Cafe and of all of us, I think ultimately the prayer is that may all beings reach their highest potential in whatever areas they choose. Let all beings have the ability, the knowledge, and the opportunity to reach their highest potential. So great. So let me just give you a very quick introduction to this whole thing, the Self-Discovery Cafe, the Self-Discovery Club, the Self-Discovery Tribe. The name has been evolving as we go. But the idea is, everyone who can turn on their videos, I'd appreciate it. It's nice to see the faces. So the idea is that, there's one way to discover ourselves through meditation and through pranayama or kriya yoga or whatever techniques that we use. But I think that one of the simplest and the most available medium through which we can discover is the world around us. Our own life, our own experiences in life can teach us a lot more than what any, teacher or book or guru can. So life is the teacher, and every subject can teach us something. And even though we all specialize in one area or the other, depending on our profession and our, and our interest, we all have the ability to at least appreciate, if not be good at least appreciate everything. And through that appreciation, whether it's arts or physics or poetry or music or movies or books or horse riding, I don't know, name it, you name it. There is something to be learned out of anything that the universe has to offer. There's something to be learned, astronomy, whatever. So the idea was that, to bring together people who have that openness, the curiosity to learn, to know, and to grow, and to learn not only about the world and the subjects, but through those subjects and through that retrospection and through that extrospection, learn something about themselves. So we've had a couple of sessions, one on music and another one on architecture, and now this one is on a movie. So the idea is to, the surface level or the mind level idea or the brain level idea is to understand the movie, the finer aspects of the movie. And the subtler aspect is the emotions, or what are the emotional lessons to be learned. And even subtler than that, what are the spiritual lessons to be learned out of this kind of experience of watching a movie. I mean, we can watch a movie just to be entertained, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are missing some deeper opportunities if we restrict ourselves to just the entertainment part. So with us today here, we have invited Swati ji. Swati, Deepak, please welcome. Swati ji is a trained clinical psychotherapist. She's practicing since many years, over 15 years. She's been counseling and helping people of all ages and with all kinds of backgrounds, from kids to adults to, and all sorts of a whole spectrum of issues, whether they are relationship based or, simpler things like studying at school. She also happens to be a part of the SSY culture, not only as being Kritika ji's daughter, but also because she's herself gone through the training courses and is a RCRT teacher. So she uses movies as a medium to connect with her patients. One of the mediums she uses is movies. And to put it in her words, it's a safer space for people to talk about movies and the characters and what happens in the movie than to talk about themselves. So by talking about the movie, the people are able to express what their innermost thoughts are more easily and more readily than directly. So without much further ado, except let me welcome Harsha also. Harsha is my wife. Most of you know her, but that's Swati ji, and most of the people here. So great. So Swati ji, I'm going to hand it over to you. Everyone, please stay on mute. If you have questions, we'll be taking questions at the end of her presentation. You can raise your hand if you want to speak or ask a question at the end. If for some reason you're off my screen and I don't see your hand, please type in the chat window your question and we'll take them in turn as possible. So great. So over to you, Swati ji. Welcome and go for it.
So for starters, I would like you to call me Swati. You're my father's age. So we'll begin from there. Namaste. I have been a psychology teacher for years and years. So I'll give you a small background. I come from a family where stories have always been very appreciated. So I've been told stories every night. So Dadaji used to read to us, or Mummy used to tell us a lot of stories. And one of the things that I learned from my grandfather is listening to something or watching something only once is never sufficient. It doesn't register, because the first time you just get caught up with the story and you're not able to look into the inner details of everything. So the repetition of being able to connect with any form of art, because a lot of you are from artistic backgrounds, you know that the repetition of being able to relook at your work becomes very important. So started with my childhood, got a phenomenal teacher in Gujarat where I trained for psychotherapy and counseling, where he used to use movies to help us learn psychology. And when I became a psychology teacher, it became a lot more easier for me to be able to connect with movies, because teaching psychology through movies becomes a lot more easier. So we'll tell you why we usually end up taking cinema, because one, it's fast paced. So, you know, reading a book, a lot of people might not have the patience to hold through it. So when you look at cinema, it's something which starts and ends within 2 to 3 hours. And that is why cinema becomes a very easy medium to work with. Second, the writer is still somebody who's one or two people who write. So there are two ways to look at cinema. One way to look at it is all the characters are different parts in our own mind. So if we take a very cinematic image itself, so whenever a person is going through conflict, uske kandhe par एक white image and एक red or a black image comes in, and they are fighting and giving different kinds of advice, right? So this different kind of advice which is there with them. I can't tell my mother to mute. So this advice which is there, the different characters in the person's mind is something which is available in our minds itself. So if I have the Ram inside me, the Ravan is also inside me. So the struggle that is happening is I'm not fighting with somebody wrong outside. I'm fighting with the wrong inside me itself. So because one writer is writing and emoting so many characters, so automatically you're talking about how much is there in our mind. So SSY, for example, talks about how we people have a lot of unlocked potential. So a lot of times art is able to show us that unlocked potential which is there. The second way to look at it is every change requires a journey. I can't decide that today I want to change and tomorrow morning I'll wake up a changed person. So we go through certain processes. So these processes become very vital for us to be able to look at. And cinema, because it picks up a plot and it ends it in 3 hours, it takes us through the journey. I'll take a very small example here before we come back to Inception. Is there is a woman, uska husband usko chhodkar chala gaya hai, and because the husband has gone away, she's just learned to live on her own. The day she falls in love with another person, her long lost husband comes back. Now a lot of times we end up feeling this all happens in movies, aisa real life mein thoda hi na hota hai. But how does it connect to real life is that day, jab tak you are not looking at taking a step forward and you're only coping and adjusting with today's life, your past will not affect you. But the day you want to step into future, you have to make sure that you have come out of your history. So Lion King ka ek dialogue hai that you can't past can hurt, but you can either run from it or learn from it. So how you have to deal with your history in order for you to have a very huge progressive future. You can look at it as Diwali ki safai apne dimag ki karna, taki the house is a little more comfortable to be around and it's a lot more organized. You could just look at letting go of your history and stepping into the future. But when I use the term letting go, it becomes a very tricky word. Easy to be said saying let go, पर वो thoughts बार बार आते हैं, वो emotions let go नहीं होते हैं. So cinema is able to project to us what could be where we get stuck. Like another one of the examples that is there is another one of the examples is that whenever you're looking at a happily ever after movie, in that happily ever after movie, the boy and the girl separate. And when they separate, the boy has to deal with his father and the girl has to deal with her mother to be able to come back happily ever after. So somewhere in a marriage or in a love relationship, we carry our relationship with our parents into that particular relationship, into our marriage. So these are very small things, like Sanjeev ji already said, that it's easier to use a movie character and talk about it rather than talk about a person, where the sense of prejudice can end up being higher. So Inception has been one of those really nice movies, inspired a little maybe from Eastern philosophies, because it talks about a lot of karma. It talks about a lot of being able to look into yourself in order for you to move ahead in life. So in my understanding, Inception is a simple love story. What is simple about it is there is this father who's stuck and he cannot go back to his country, and all he wants to do is go back to his country because his children are waiting for him there. So there are two ways of being in love. One is you take all the responsibility and do everything right towards the children. In my understanding, falling in love goes beyond just taking responsibility. It's about, if you're in love, automatically responsibility is a small part of being in love with somebody. So this freedom to be in love with your children, where you're not caught up in your job, where you're not caught up with the financial stresses, where you're not caught up with the coronavirus stresses, where you're not caught up, but the freedom to be in love with your children. So this is a simple love story between a father and his children, a father trying very hard to go back to his children, but there are a lot of layers in between. There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of pain which is involved in the going back to the children. So he has to fight a lot of things to fall in love. So the simplistic love story also, जो हम लोग बचपन से सुनते आए हैं, राजा है, रानी है, उन दोनों को प्यार हो गया है, but there is some Rakshas, there is some demon which stops them from being in love. So then the prince has to cross mountains, fight dragons. So every culture has this story. So falling in love again has a process, a movement. So Inception is about this movement to feel free to fall in love. So what we can do is, what Sanjeev ji suggested is, we'll see a small clipping for us to kickstart the whole process. And you just watch the clipping and then I'll hold you through my thoughts around the movie. Right?
Great.
Sanjeev
Yeah,
ji,
so I'm going
showing
to.
the clipping?
Yeah, so we'll play a small clip. While I'm doing that, let me just say, it's interesting. There were so many themes running through this film, but I really didn't think of it like a love story. That's because it's so complex that there are so many things that you don't, and at its core, it's really a love story. You're so true. People who saw the movie, raise your hand.
Sanjeev, we did a very good homework. 4 hours, 4 hours and pause and play.
Very good, very good.
I have paused, rewind, and played and done.
And after 4 hours also we are here thinking what has happened in the movie.
That's why we got Swati to help us out.
I realized.
Right.
Very true.
Okay, so we go with the assumption that all of us have recently seen the film. So because we have recently seen the film, I'll
so
run you
as
through the
just one
couple of
sec.
important dialogue. Sure.
So as we move, so I just want to also introduce Manoj ji over here. Manoj, raise your hand, wave to us. Yeah, one of my closest friends and fellow teacher and friend, philosopher and guide. each other.
Ellie Tom.
And Ellie Tom is also here. Ellie Tom is also a wonderful divine soul who is amongst us, who has been sustaining himself on without food and water for several years.
Oh,
Okay, so this is one of the more amazing people who are defying all the known laws that we live by about food and air and water and so on. And so that's Ellie Tom over there. So I mean, I'm telling you, we are really lucky. We have, I think, some of the most amazing people with us. Oh, what is that sound? Is that the maybe my movie is still playing?
Something which Vedoshi.
No, wait. Let me make sure my movie is off.
volume motu par hai, dekho,
No. We are not going to play. We are not going to play this. Okay, so okay, great. So wonderful. And Vedosi, she's the other inspiration for this whole Discovery Cafe thing, the concept. She was one of the first people to like take it on. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. So, and she's Manojji's daughter. So great. Let's keep going.
okay. So talking about the simplicity of the story, that it is a father wanting to go back home to his children, we look through the layers that we are talking about. So most people who would be connected even remotely to psychology would all be knowing of the name Sigmund Freud. Similarly, like in Indian context, we talk about it, saying most of our ability, most of our awareness is at an unconscious level, and becoming a more enlightened person is about discovering more and more of these layers within our own self. So this unlayering is what this movie is about, as to what are the different layers person has to penetrate into to discover that little child inside themselves to have the joyful living. So the clipping that we were trying to show you was the first training session between Ariadne and Cobb. So there are two people whose journey we will be looking at. So I'll tell you the problem first, and then I'll tell you their journeys to how they reach to solve it. Cobb, we already know, is in a foreign country. He cannot go back to his country because his country people believe he killed his wife. And because there are these charges on him, he cannot go back. The second person who's struggling through a lot of inner disappointment of his own self is Fisher, the tycoon's son. He is struggling with the fact that his father feels that his father is disappointed in him. So whenever a child ends up feeling that my parent is disappointed in me, the world can come back and say, wow, you're a great person, but a parent's disappointment can be very overwhelming. So Fisher, despite the fact that he is going to inherit such a big empire, he still is somebody who is very sad and low because his father is disappointed in him. So this is the problem we are struggling with. Cobb cannot go home, and Fisher is very unhappy because his father is disappointed in him. Now, there is this song which is there saying, "Tum besahara ho to kisi ka sahara bano, tumko apne aap hi sahara mil jayega." So Cobb, in his helping Fisher, ends up uncovering a lot of his problems and his layers also. So we'll start with the concept. Sigmund Freud talked about the unconscious levels, and whenever we are faced with a problem, we usually go in denial. We say, no, everything is okay. No, I have everything under control. So if you see Cobb's first half ke andar, he constantly, for every time he is asked, are you okay? His answer is, yes, I'm okay. Everything is under control. I have everything under control. So this movement that is happening in Cobb, saying he's trying to struggle in the outside world, and there is an inner struggle which is happening at two different levels. It is not happening simultaneously. So if we look at COBOL engineering as this corporate world where we have to make money and they are constantly saying 24 hours of yours is mine. And even if I want to spend time with my children, I don't have the time because the office is keeping me away. That's the same concept even here. COBOL engineering is not letting Cobb go back to his children. Okay? Now, what are the issues in Cobb's life? Very dreamy guy, extremely ambitious. He is an architect, and he creates a lot of things. They talk about the beautiful inspiration. So we'll talk a little about dreams. अगर आप देखेंगे सपनों में आप एक बहुत बड़ी दुनिया बना सकते हैं. So somebody dreamt about the aeroplane being there. So Wright brothers might have been somebody who created the first model which worked. But aeroplanes were dreamt about and talked about. Even our mythology talks about the Pushpak Viman and everything. So that need for imagination and how imagination can create worlds, a lot of times in our need to create so much, to defy physics, to defy reality, a lot of times we can get trapped in our own mind. So Cobb is this guy who has gotten trapped in the idea of creating a lot, and because he's caught in that particular idea, he is somebody who is not able to come back to reality, right? So what is Cobb's personality about? We will look at that. I sent a very long write-up about the different relationships. So we'll talk about Cobb's life here. Cobb's wife, Moll, was a wonderful person when she was alive. But after death, because of Cobb's guilt, she lives as a very attacking person inside his head. I'll take a small biological fact to go back to what I was talking about. आप जब किसी चीज को देखते हैं, you are not seeing something that is outside. Whatever is outside creates a reverted image behind your retina, and then you perceive it to be the object that it is. So whatever is happening from inside. So if you are blind and you have not registered that image, you will not be able to see it. The same with ignorance, that if you don't know about something, you will not be able to perceive it. So similarly, in psychology, what ends up happening, suppose I'm talking to my husband. I'm actually not talking to my husband. I'm talking to the image of my husband, which is in my head. So my actual husband might be a very sorted person. But in my head, if my husband is a crooked person, my dialogue itself will start as though my husband is a crooked person. So you're getting it. So while the other person, we say, I understand you, we understand only the image that person has been able to create in my head. So we are actually reacting to our own mind and not really to the person outside. That's why we say that our lens needs to be clear on how to see the world, right? So a lot of people talk about toxic relationships and blah, blah, blah. And I say, if there are toxic relationships, then I should be in hell, because I invite only people's problems in my life. Nobody says, I'm happy, I'll go to a counselor. Only when people are going through their toxicity is where you look at the cleaning part of it. Or a lot of you are from SSY. So part of the training is BST. Unless you have done your BST, to dream about going to the bigger levels is not acceptable, right? So that purification process. So what is happening is we all create projections inside the mind. The reason why we wanted to show you the clipping that was going to be there is the first training of Ariadne, where Ariadne is being trained into how to be understanding projection. I'll take a simple example here from this concept. There is a dialogue during this training. He says, Cobb says, don't change things so fast. Otherwise, my subconscious will feel threatened and they will end up attacking you. Right? What we mean by this here is, if we take a daughter-in-law for an example, Indian context mein abhi bhi ye hota hai that the daughter-in-laws come into the house of the man. So when a daughter-in-law comes into the house, she comes with a lot of dreams and her own way of dealing with things and her own things. And if a daughter-in-law tries very hard to change the whole family segment, correct or wrong, she will just be perceived as an attacker. So what we have to do as part of change is very simply adapt to the thing that you're trying to change and then gently change, right? So that is the training that we are talking about, that change is possible. It is possible for you to have your ideal world and build and go beyond what is physically possible. But for that to happen, you will have to understand that you have to be inspired by pure imagination. If you develop it by history, Okay, let us take this small example again. We'll hold marriages as a way because that's a very intense relationship. In a marriage, if I look at it as a new relationship, everything is possible in that relationship. But if in my marriage I end up feeling that my husband is a little like my father, my husband is a little like that uncle, my husband is a little like that man I didn't like at all. So if I'm carrying my history into the marriage, so if you're carrying any memories into the marriage, it will become stereotypes. And as soon as you have stereotypes, there will be chaos, right? So any new thing has the potential of becoming great if your history is cleared out of that. So this movie talks about how you don't need to, when you're building something new, bring your memory into it, but try and create something from scratch. You can create huge cities of your own desire, right? So that is again one of the learnings that comes from that particular segment. Now, the other segment is, why does Cobb need Ariadne? This is a very important concept here. In the movie Gajni also, if any of you would have seen, I'll talk a little about that too. The reason why I'm picking Gajni is because Christopher Nolan had made Memento, and I've not seen that film. So there is something about being a student. Ariadne is a student. So when you are a student, you don't come with a mindset of saying, I know better than you. You are permitting, you're surrendering to the knowledge of the other person, and you're able to accept and absorb a lot. So when the first architect, Nash, fails because he had begun to bring in his projections or his problems into their project, you needed a fresh mind. You needed a student-like mind which will not bring in its own chaos into the system, which will be a lot more open-minded. So if you go to see, Ariadne is the one who's curious. What comes with being a great student is being curious and open-minded. So she was very curious to understand what is happening in Cobb's life. So I'll take you through a little detail. Arthur knows Cobb for a very long period of time. But Arthur is not interested in knowing, oh, you're having Moll as a problem. Okay, fine, deal with it. So Arthur doesn't get involved in Cobb's problems. But Ariadne, whenever you have that curious mind, that little involved mind, she's curious enough to want to understand Cobb. So when we go from a student level, like as counselors also, we are not people who work as experts. We go in as students saying, you are the subject and we are trying to study you as a person. So you needed a student to be there. So why I picked up Gajni also as an example is the girl who ends up helping Amir Khan in the end is a medical student. She's not a doctor. So as soon as you become a professional, you stop being curious. You just believe you have to know the answers. But 80% of the times in life, at least my experiences, you don't know the answers. As you keep going along, you discover the answers on the way. So you have to become a student to every subject. So Ariadne is that student part inside a person to be open-minded and curious in order for us to be moving along. So you needed Ariadne as a very important concept. The second concept that is very important is Seto, the businessman who is wanting this inception to happen finally. So what does Seto stand for? Seto stands for this opportunity, saying ki come what may, karo, dekha jayega. So when they have to have that flight time with Fisher, he buys the whole airline. So he's this guy who's willing to invest anything for this idea to take off. So this is something my music teacher usually ends up saying. If you have to learn anything, you have to invest 4 things. One is your time. Second is your money. Second is your physical effort. And fourth most important thing is openness to criticism and failure. If you're not open to criticism and failure, automatically what ends up happening, you will not permit yourself the whole journey. You will only reach out for the lowest hanging fruit. So what we are talking about is Seto is this opportunity who is willing to invest as much is required for the idea to take off. The other person who's very vital to the whole process is Arthur. So Arthur is this very methodical, research oriented. So हम जो knowledge बोलते हैं, So Arthur stands for that knowledge to be able to go ahead and execute anything which is required to be executed. And Eames, that is the Tom Hardy character. The Tom Hardy character stands for the positivity. So he's upset, saying, you took me into a very complicated situation. But finally, he's very enthusiastic and say, I will do my share of it. He is the person who can disguise and change himself to work on a particular project, right? So you need somebody as imaginative as Eames. You need somebody as dedicated and disciplined as Arthur. You need somebody as equipped. जैसे बड़े से बड़े surgery के लिए you need the right kind of anesthesia. So anesthesia is not something मैंने आके injection दे दिया and everything is working. So you need the Yusuf, that is the chemist character, in order for you to be able to go through your inner layers, right? In a lot of ways, we end up having this mantra to be able to hold us as when we are newer people into introspection. So introspection is what this movie is about, saying how do you go through your inner layers. So are you with me till the time that I said what all do you need to go inside, right? I'll connect it a little to Hindu mythology. We have 6 gods, main gods. We have 33 crore gods. But if you go to see, the god of creation is Brahma. His accompaniment is of Saraswati, as in you need knowledge to create. You cannot create without knowledge. So they have to go hand in hand together. Then you have Vishnu, who maintains the whole segment. And for maintenance, what do you need? You need resources. So you have Lakshmi. So maintaining and growth will have to happen with resources, and the closure and the destruction also which is required. You need the equal amount of destruction. So you have Shiva, who will have to have Shakti in order to destroy. So you need the Shanti of Shiva and you need the power of Parvati to be able to deal with it. So this movie talks about how you will need the right amount of energy behind you if you were to be executing something great, right? It is all personified, and that is why we have Eames, we have Arthur, we have Ariadne, we have Seto, and these people have to take you through the inner journey. So these are the important characters in our life. Now the journey becomes very important. So I'll take you to the second half of the movie. The second half of the movie is they are all in the flight and they fall off to sleep in the flight. So that is the reality. We all know that. The rest of the things are layers of the dream. So what is the first layer of the dream? That is the chemist. That is Yusuf is driving the car. And that car wale sequence ke andar, there is a lot of raining that is happening. Saying whenever you will permit yourself to go a little deeper into yourself, you'll just feel so overwhelmed with everything just coming and pouring onto you. So you need somebody to drive you into that particular world to be able to experience saying, I'm ready to go to the deeper layer. So you need the chemist, you need the anesthetist before the surgery can happen, for the right amount of anesthesia for you to be able to then look at the rest of the things. So Yusuf is only at the first dream. If you go to see, he doesn't have any role to play in the deeper level of the dreams. Okay? He is only in that dream who's driving you into your unconscious mind. The second level of the dream is in the hotel where you don't have gravity. You feel like everything is floating in the air, but you need knowledge to tie everything together. So in the hotel, if you go to see, the most important person there is Arthur. He is managing that with the other people going into the third dream, right? So first you need the willingness and the drive to go into your subconscious. Then you need the knowledge to be able to deal with that level so that you don't go into a limbo. What did we say? If we go into our own imaginary world or if we go into our unconscious world, it is either possible that you come out really richer, or it is possible that you go into a limbo and you get caught in your own mental cycles and your own imaginary world. So you need that knowledge which will not have any base, which will not have any creativity, but you will have to have that little instinct to put things together. And Arthur is managing everything in the hotel scenario, which is the second level of the dream. The third level of the dream, as you go deeper into your subconscious, it will feel very cold and frigid. It will just feel कि कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. So the third scene is in the snow. अब third scene को अगर आप याद रखते हैं, what drives the third scene is Eames. Eames is the one who's setting up targets in that place. Eames is the one who's doing everything. So when you're feeling so cold and feeling that you'll not be able to break out of that, you need that warmth of positivity that Eames has. चल ना करके देखते हैं. Oh, you must have learned something from the past. Oh, have you done Inception before? If you have failed also, you might have learned something from that place. So Eames is this surge of positivity who's angry saying you brought me into a very risky situation, but who's willing to say, but I'm curious to know what is going to happen next, right? So Eames is the one who manages the frigid layer and things work in that particular segment. Now the fourth layer for Fisher is immediately after Eames, जहाँ पे वो safe में जाता है. He is having a chat with his father, and his father says, I'm disappointed that you tried to be me. In the be your own person. Okay? So this change in his idea, so I'll talk about the word idea which is there throughout the movie, but this change in his mental idea makes him a free man. Otherwise he's this unhappy, grunchy. So how can you let go? Not by saying I'll let go, I'll let go, I'll let go. You have to go through the layers of introspection and you'll be able to let go. So Fisher could let go after the frigid layer. But Cobb's issues were a lot more complicated. He was feeling guilty कि उसने अपनी बीवी को मार दिया है. He was feeling upset that he can't go back to his own country. He was feeling a little, again, not very happy about the fact that he had become thieves. So Miles had taught him to navigate people's mind, but he had become a thief and he was stealing people's unconscious ideas, right? So he was very disappointed and unhappy with himself, and that is why he needed to go and deal with his guilt. So the last resolution, if you remember, of Cobb is he talks to his wife. And who goes with him there is unconscious support of Ariadne. So that freshness of being a child who's very curious, but unconditionally being there, saying that I'm still coming with you, right? So she goes with him and he resolves everything with his wife. Just a thought coming, it's a digression, but I don't know the whole story. I should have done my research before bringing this up here, but yet. I remember this story from Buddhism where Buddha takes this one student along everywhere. But when he goes to meet Yashodhara, because he has to apologize to her, वो उसको सोता हुआ छोड़ के चले गए थे ना, so he had done something wrong towards somebody. So when Buddha, after he became Buddha, he had to go and apologize to his wife. He told the student, listen, this is my thing. I have to apologize to my wife. So even a person like Buddha who got entitled, after entitlement, had to go and apologize to somebody he felt he had wronged. So Cobb had to clear up this air with his wife. He had to let go the wife in order for him to be able to discover more. So now you don't need unconditional support. Ariadne leaves him at level 4 and he alone goes to meet Seto. So the opportunity is still Cobb's, saying that I want to fall in love with my children. I want to go back to my children. Ariadne's support could reach him to let go his wife. But now, whether he will take the leap of faith or not, he takes the leap of faith and he goes to meet Seto. And Seto and him in the 5th layer of the dream then ride back and come back to consciousness. What I mean to say here is a lot of you, and if I'm making a wrong statement, please correct it after I'm done, that taking a person into meditation is not one of those easiest things. And once taking the person into meditation, also teaching them how to come out of it is as important when an initiator takes them into meditation, right? So how to move in and out of it. So moving in and moving out can be done by somebody else for you. But the inner layers, for example, one of the things they say, if you enter somebody's subconscious mind, you have to work with what is there. You can't decide and train the mind. So if I talk about myself as a counselor, I don't train people to think a particular way. Once they tell me how they are thinking, we jointly make corrections in that if it is causing them distress. I can't decide I will be clean the slate. I will teach you everything from zero. Your family taught you wrong. As a counselor, you can't do that. You work with what is there in you, which is already ready. So we work with the idea of repair. So Cobb has to go through 5 layers for him to let go and go back to his children. Fisher has to go 4 layers to be able to let go the feelings of ajeeb sa confusion he has in his relationship with his father. And the movie ends at a very tricky note. The movie ends with the totem spinning. So the whole concept of the movie is, If the totem falls, means you are in reality. If the totem is keeping on spinning, that means you're still in a dream. That was their reality indicator. Now, why is it left for us to say that the totem is spinning? Now, I've read a little of Christopher Nolan, what he had in mind, and this is my version of, so there's a mix of both that I'm talking about. The first time he is sitting with a gun in the 16th minute of the movie, sitting with a gun and moving the totem, saying, I'll kill myself if the totem does not fall, and the totem falls. That means he's so anxious to know whether he's dreaming or he's in reality. He's just not able to meet the unconscious mind and his awareness of the depth with his conscious world. So he's dividing his unconscious mind from the conscious mind. Now, what is happening in the last scene is his unconscious mind and conscious mind have come together. So it doesn't matter whether it is a dream or it is reality. It is still part of his life. Now, life is still a drama. So in our culture, we call it Maya. So me being married is Maya. Me having children is Maya. Me having a profession is Maya. So whether I were to look at this as an illusion and the real truth is just the godliness we have in us. Yeah, I'm a wife. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. These things are the reality of my life. Now, this is a choice to look at it. But the movie ends with Cobb not being anxious whether it is reality or dream. It is the movement and the meeting point of your imaginary life with your real life, and you bring it together. So anybody who would have been imaginary in their childhood were called Sheikh Chillis by their family, saying, oh, you will never do anything meaningful in life because you don't live in real life. But all the great discoveries and inventions have happened because of dreaming people. All the great art and architecture and literature has come out of dreamy people. Realistic people cannot create, just because they're too stuck up with the reality. So the ending of the movie, according to me, was the meeting point between the unconscious and the conscious mind, and his okayness with saying that both the worlds have a bridge. Both the worlds are not divorced from each other. So he's not anxious anymore. He is not scared anymore. So finally, what are we trying to win? To become a free person, to fall in love, is our own fears. We are not trying to change the world. We are not trying to do this. We are not trying to do that. If I am not scared anymore, so whether it is reality or fantasy doesn't matter. No, it is spinning. It is spinning. So that permission of the meeting of the conscious and the unconscious mind is what I think the last spinning of that particular thing is. Now, I've already done this movie so many times, I can ramble on for 2 hours for all you know. So what we'll do is we'll just leave it a little more open to your interpretation of it. This was my interpretation of the movie. But yeah, open to both comments as well as questions.
Great, great. Wow. Lot to understand, lot to think, and lot to know. And wonderful. So yeah, guys, comments, questions, your take on the movie. What did you think? What did you learn before we heard all this from Swati, and now that we know what? Yeah, you have something, Harshado.
Yeah, actually, when I saw the movie, it was quite confusing for me, and it was like, oh, it's okay. I'm not too much for this kind of movies and all. But after listening to you, it turned out to be totally the other side of the coin. And I really found it so interesting, and I understood it so well.
Thank
It was very interesting.
It is a brilliant movie. In fact, it is said that Christopher Nolan took 8 years to write it.
Is that right?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I was telling Sanjeev, I don't think I'll be sitting today. It's going to be dry and this and that.
Right.
Yeah, but then I
Right.
said I will sit and see what's happening. But I'm so happy and glad that I sat down here and I'm glued to my seat.
And thank
I enjoyed it. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Excellent.
Great, great. Okay, great. Comments, questions, guys. Yeah,
Finger up.
you can just unmute yourself and ask Um,
It was fab. Like your understanding about this movie was amazing, especially the last part. Like the last part is something I didn't understand at all. I was like, how
Right.
is it spinning? I mean,
Brilliant.
I really liked it. Like how even when we're in a dream state in reality, and when that combines, then there's no like real and not real or something. It ends there.
It's kind of
Like, it
surreal.
merges. It ends.
surreal.
It is kind of surreal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like once
Sanjeev uncle was very sure he wanted to show that one segment. Unfortunately, when he was showing it to me, maybe one sharing was allowed, so I was able to see it. But with the group, Prime doesn't allow. But uncle was very sure he wanted to show that spinning part.
Ah.
So, I was not understanding when he kept telling me, I want to show the conclusion, I want to show the conclusion. I'm like, I don't know what conclusion. And I ran him through some 5 conclusions. He said, no, the spinning of the totem I want to show. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is the culmination of the whole movie. Yeah.
Exactly.
like it's like whenever like I dream something, I sometimes used to feel ki, Arey, this is a dream. Why am I spending time and like dreaming something? Like if I think of my like dreams and my visions and all, I'm like, why am I putting so much energy? Or it's not reality. But,
Right.
but then actually, if I go so into my vision and my dream, that I actually feel that I have that thing, then it ends there. Because
Yeah.
then I don't actually feel the desire to have it, and like it just ends there. Like it merges basically.
So some dreams require just the ending there, that you permit yourself the flight of imagination. And some dreams are good to imagine now, but they will come to fruition only after some time. So you have to leave it to time for them to really, become practical or become realized. So, for example, the aeroplane example that I took, somebody would have dreamt and dreamt and dreamt and dreamt and dreamt, and then Leonardo da Vinci sat down and made the first prototype or the picture of the plane ki is tarah ka picture hoga so it can fly, and then finally science made the flight. So some things take time to realize and some things are just happy with imagination. So yeah. It is fun to dream,
Superb.
but not be caught
Great.
in a limbo. Equally important.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was amazed by that, by what you said about the third or fourth layer, whatever it was, which was cold.
Yeah.
So, right, it's a frigid or a cold area where, maybe emotions are not that powerful, but you need some other kind of strength to go through that, whatever that is.
Yes.
And I never, connected the symbolism in that particular sequence,
Right.
that the snow stands for the cold and the, that sort of frigid part of us, which may be kind of frozen in time or frozen in emotion or frozen in some way. And
In
therefore, and
psychology,
put it
we
into
call
snow.
that phase impasse.
Sorry?
In psychology, we call that phase impasse. That you're
Impasse,
stuck in an
okay.
impasse.
Right.
You know what your problems are, you know the fears you're dealing with,
Yeah.
but you're not able to break through to
Break
become
through
a
it.
free person.
Yeah,
So
because
that's the
it's so
frigidity.
stuck. It's so stuck or solid or frozen in time.
Yeah.
Or in your mind, it's so frozen you can't break through it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
In fact,
I mean,
Fisher even ends up saying, couldn't somebody have dreamt of a beach? Why do you need to be in so much snow? But yeah,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
do have to encounter the frigid space before
Yeah.
you feel the
Before you
warmth
can
again.
come through. Nagarajanji, go ahead. You have something. Yeah.
I'll say.
Okay, who is this? Manjo, go.
Yeah. So, first, hi, how are you? So, first of all, it took us 2 hours, 28 minutes movie, took us about 3.5 to 4 hours to finish. With Sumit pausing every now and then and rewinding and telling us what is. So I would have never understood the movie if he was not there at one level. That means with him being there was about, I understood 50%, I think. And when you explained everything right now, then I understood probably 90-95% after your explanation. So I really appreciate your interpretation and explanation of the conscious, subconscious. Beautifully you have explained. Thank you very much. But the only thing I understood was the last part which Sanjeev wanted to show. That part I understood very well.
Yeah, we are actually we are going to, after this discussion, I want to take you all through a small open eyes meditation or a contemplation to really look at what is this reality that we think is so solid? How solid is it really? You know, so we'll do that at the end of this, and this
That-
movie kind of probably
the last
segues nicely into that.
The last part, when that thing was spinning,
Yeah.
so it left it an open question. You know, is this
Yeah.
real or is it not real? That is
Is
up
it
to
real or is
the
it a
viewer
dream?
how to decide, you know.
Right.
And yeah, like I was sharing one small anecdote that Lao Tzu was dreaming. I mean, rather he got up one day from his dream and he was very very perplexed. And the person came and asked, all his disciples were upset, like, how come my master is so disturbed, means confused. I've never seen my master confused. So he says, no, I got a dream. So he says, what about, we all get dreams. So he says, no, I got a dream. I was a butterfly. So he says, what about it? So what's the big thing? So then he answers, no, now I am confused. Am I Lao Tzu dreaming that I am a butterfly, or is the butterfly dreaming that it is Lao Tzu?
Yeah.
So same
Exactly.
thing, but what this,
Yep.
So
Yep.
the answer is you just enjoy the process. Keep on dreaming, but don't take it so seriously.
Yeah, don't
Right,
get into
right.
the limbo.
No,
So
and
that's
in
the
fact,
idea.
I want to go through an experiential understanding of this, that this Maya that you mentioned, this illusion called life. In what way is it really an illusion? And even though we may accept it because it's written in the, in the big books, in the Vedas or whatever, how can we actually experience this as an illusion? What is so illusory about it? It seems very real. It seems very solid. I mean, when you hit a rock, you're going to feel hurt. So it feels real. So where is this concept of illusion coming from? So we'll go into that towards the end of today. I want to take you through a 10-minute idea on that. Sumit, you want to say something, and then Nagarajanji. Okay, Sumit, go.
So my interpretation of the end was a little different than what I just heard. And so my interpretation of the end was that this movie was made from the perspective of Leonardo or
Yes.
Cobb, and not from his wife's perspective. It was actually Cobb's interpretation of the entire life and whatever he understood. So from that perspective, he dealt with there. And when he spun the top, and then for him, this was real. It didn't matter to him whether this was real or not, because for him, it was real. And that's how life is, that for you, what is real is real. You don't even bother whether this is real or imaginary. And you are actually in a limbo only when you are confused whether this is real or this is imaginary. So each of their dreams was also as real as much as they believed that that was real. For those who thought that this was imaginary, it was imaginary. He spinned it, but for him it was so real that he just went and
He walks
hugged
away.
his
He walked
children
away.
rather
Yeah.
than
He walked away from that
about
question.
it.
Yeah.
And probably since it was still spinning, maybe just that the other is also true. Maybe the wife was correct that this was a dream, in fact. And this was just that Cobb couldn't realize that this is still a dream. And so he continued that way. And the wife was also probably...
I think that's the beauty of art, and the reason why we should never divorce from that in the name of science is because art permits this room for interpretation. Like the group I run, where we do a lot of this, we call it yet another perspective on movies. So with a lot of art, if you go to see, you can choose to have your own interpretation of how you put meaning to it. Finally, it is meaningful, but what meaning you attach becomes very personal.
Perfect. Yeah. Right. Nagarajan, go ahead. Great comment, Sumit. Perfect observation. That he walks away at the end. He doesn't even wait to find out if he toppled over or not. Fabulous. Yeah. Reminds me of that song, Phooli Phool Zindagi Bahar Hai, Teh Kar Liya. Aaj fir jeene ki tamanna hai. That is Phooli Phool Zindagi Bahar Hai, Teh Kar Liya. I've decided this is what it is. Now, whether it is or not, it doesn't even matter. Yeah, Nagarajan, sorry, go ahead.
Swati, thank you very much. It was a wonderful analysis and new interpretations, and I think the whole experience was enriching. I was fascinated by one message, that ideas are very powerful. Ideas are like viruses, right? They can really take a life of their own. And Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors. Yeah. I really love the trilogy that he did on Batman, which is the Dark Knight series.
In fact, just sharing this, only I think 2 Sundays ago, my husband and we made our group watch all the 3 Batman, and we talked about all the 3 Batmans and how the movement happened. So yeah, I agree with you completely there.
Because I'm 15 the Batman movies from 10 times. Yeah.
That would be 9
No,
hours
what I
then.
was saying,
Today
so
was
in the
only
Batman
4
movie,
hours.
there are two. One statement he made is, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So if you are a guy with supernatural power, you have to put it to use. That's one idea, which is fine. But the biggest idea in the Batman movie is, why do we really have why did he choose Batman as the, let's say, logo or motive or whatever, to really represent the good against the evil? And he explains, saying that bat as a creature, we basically have revulsion to that creature, and we have fear in our minds. So a creature which is always present, which you can't really destroy, and that is going to fight evil, passes terror in the minds of people who are bad people, right? So one fantastic message. He could have chosen anything as a symbol of good against evil. He chose Batman, and that is only because of the fact that bat as a symbol is so powerful that it can really send shivers through the spine of people who want to really do bad things. So I think Christopher Nolan's communication
His
of
work is
powerful
exemplary.
ideas, it's fantastic. I think you need to see many times to really understand what he's trying to say.
Fact,
Great,
to be
great
honest,
interpretation.
like
Thank
Sanjeev ji, your wife was saying, I was bullied into watching this movie. I had not wanted to watch it in the beginning. But once I watched it and the layers began to form in my mind, I watched it several times after that.
Right. Yeah. With movies
Pooja
also.
ji.
Yeah, Pooja, go ahead.
Yes. Like everyone says, Swati, after listening to you, the movie takes on much more refreshing ways to enjoy it. So I think when I'll watch it again, I will be seeing it from a whole new perspective. Like how you said, we all probably have a little bit of Sato in us, Arthur in us, and it comes out at different times, probably in different measures. But it's good to have a little bit of all of that so we can deal with life as it comes along.
Right.
Just take it as it comes. And I really, your take makes the movie so much more understanding than what I started with when I started watching the movie.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. It was very refreshing. Thank you.
Great. Lop, you have a question? You remember you asked me this afternoon about the architect. Go ahead. And I mean, I had one perspective, but let's ask Swati about.
Yeah, but since this is all about the subconscious anyway, so I guess I was asking Sanjeev that what does a real architect have? What place does a real architect have in constructing a dream? Because the physical aspect of it, he said that you have to construct, and the mazes and all. I was a little confused about that. What is this maze for it? And how does the architect create a physical maze or a physical place where the dream sequences and the dream layers can happen? I couldn't understand that.
So I'll tell you how the whole thing works, and I think when Nagarjun sir brought it up, I just realized कि मैंने main चीज तो बात किया ही नहीं, that the movie talks about how ideas form who we are as people. So the word idea and the concept idea is very important. So why do we need an architect is what I'll just talk about. We all work, and human functioning depends on ideas, in the sense that you and I grew up with the concept saying that honesty is the best policy. Now, because we have an idea that honesty is the best policy, we create our behavior around honesty being the best policy. So whatever are the ideas that have made us who we are, वो हमारे मम्मी पापा ने सिखाया होगा, कल्चर ने सिखाया होगा, या हमें खुद को बैठे बैठे कोई आइडिया आया होगा, या किसी बुक में पढ़ा होगा. There is a culmination of all of that together. Now, why you need an architect inside the brain is so that you're able to have the ideas being independent of each other and not get into conflict. So he says, don't show me the layout, otherwise somebody will bring in their projections inside it. So every cell in the body has its own cell wall. So every idea needs to be having its own wall and a good construction. There could be a paradox, like the repeated staircase and everything that show that you defy physics. So our mind defies physics. It doesn't work with physics, but the mind also needs to have ideas which are independent. If I take myself as an example, I learned after making a lot of errors. So now my children are adults, but when they were children, the psychologist inside me and the mother inside me, these are two ideas, they would fight so badly. As a psychologist, I would say इस चीज के लिए उनको communicate करना चाहिए. As a mother, I would say, yaar, itni koi badi baat nahi hai, let go karna chahiye. Now, whether to tell my children or not to tell my children was a conflict in itself. So why do you need have an architect with the ideas? Is to be able to give it more structure. But the idea is a fluid thing. It's like he says, it's a virus. It is so contagious that it will catch up everything. So you need to define every idea. So if we just did the analysis, we were talking about Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, for example, if we look at Krishna as an idea, right? So Krishna was okay with that little complexity that Ram was not okay with. So Ram's ideas of being good and bad was very rigid. But Krishna did that little mischief. He also ran away. तो रन छोड़ है तो वो छोड़ के भी चले गए. He was rebel enough to say हम इंद्र की पूजा नहीं करेंगे, गोवर्धन पर्वत की पूजा करेंगे. So this willingness to say that every idea needs to have a structure, you need an architect or a designer to be able to give it a structure. So it's not about many ideas piled together and one pile of ideas you're working with. Every idea needs to have the right connection. So joining the dots, how different ideas in your head need to come together so that you are not a confused mess. You are a well-designed, laid out, beautiful city, beautiful house. So that's why you needed an architect. You have to design ideas.
I have a humorous take. I have a humorous take I want to share.
Anji.
So Lopa, so
Yes.
architect, what does he do? He creates a building.
Right.
Buildings are for whom? It is for the people who have hired the architect. So the first architect will have to understand the person, their requirement, and the context in which he is designing the building. That is the purpose or the role of an architect.
Yeah.
For example, we really just heard that being honest is basically a great idea. Honesty pays. But if your wife were to ask you, saying that I may not be the most beautiful woman on this earth, okay, like you'll get into trouble if you really tell the truth. So you have to understand the context. You have to be an architect. You have to understand who is asking, in what context is that question being asked. Being honest is the best policy or not, you'll have to really decide. So everybody needs to be an architect. That is basically understanding the context and really designing the response is basically key for survival. I hope you enjoyed this.
Yep, that's right.
So I had one sort of, what do you call it? Simple question maybe, but I don't know. There was one point in the movie towards the end where he's in the last layer and he says, I found her secret, his wife's, he's talking about the wife, and I eventually found the secret. And he goes to the safe and I think he finds the totem in there. So, but I was confused about what he was talking about in terms of what was the secret that he found out of hers.
That she had locked away reality and she had accepted limbo as part of her reality. So the locking away of the totem, saying I don't, so his reality is discovered in the totem spinning, saying real hai ki nahi hai doesn't matter. And
Correct.
she said, I don't want to find reality because the togetherness and love is there. So she hides away the concept which will bring her back to reality. So he finds her locking away the need to go back to reality.
Oh, so she's purposely locked away this means of determining whether she's in real.
Yeah.
She's willing to
Because
just
you want to be in a train, it doesn't matter where the train will take you because you'll be together.
Right.
So all the wife wanted was the togetherness. And when you look at real life, a lot of times I think the least amount of time I spend is with my husband. He spends 80% of his time at office. I spend 80% of my time with my patients. You know, so a lot of times the sense of togetherness in the mind is a lot more easier than fighting the realities of life and then being together.
Perfect.
So that is my take.
One more kind of different and very deep concept in the movie was about time, right? About how in the different layers time behaves differently, and I'm trying to relate that to the concept of eternity at the unconscious, at the most conscious level of the eternal now, where there's absolutely no movement of time at all. So is that the deepest layer or the most real layer, or where? So putting it on the time map that Nolan has, that time slows and slows and slows and slows and becomes more and more closer to eternity as you go deeper. So what, I just wanted your take on that one.
I don't know. I think I'm too small a person to be able to talk about that kind of intensity. But I'll again take a reference from my music teacher. He usually says that only two kinds of people can sing very well. One who don't know music at all, so they just sing, and oh, they're singing very well because there's no fear, there's no sur, there's no, oh my God, I lost the tan or anything. Second, the people who really know and now can play with it as much. In psychology also, we say that two people can be happy. One who are absolutely ignorant and don't know their problems, they can give others hell, but they within themselves are happy. The second is when you go into that eternity and that really being in the time, right? Where everything is just very steady. It's stable. It's not stagnant. It is stable. You have to go through these layers and then you find it. So I think it is more the cycle of life. That you are a free person and then you discover a lot more freedom and come back to becoming a free person. So I think it is more symbolic of the cycle of life.
Right. And
Sanjeev,
when you, yeah, go ahead.
I think in meditation, you keep saying that you are in meditation when time stops.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct? You're not in the past, you're not. So similarly, as you go deeper into the layers, you're reaching a state of nirvana or the state of meditation. So as you really go down, time slows and slows and slows and completely comes to stop. That's an analogy which I think.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. Exactly. So yeah, and I mean, one of the things I always struggle with as a teacher of meditation or of spirituality is how do you take concepts like oneness or non-duality, Advaita, or how do you take those kind of things and put it into terms that anyone on the street can understand? That's my biggest challenge, right? So if you talk about Advaita and divine and this and that, and if you ask the person on the street to believe it, and they may believe it at a certain level, but how do you make it real and tangible either in a story or in whatever form, such that they are able to actually relate to it and say, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because when you talk about pure consciousness and you talk about bliss or nirvana or joyfulness and all that, okay, the guy on the street is going to go, what are you talking about? I'm struggling with my daily whatever. How do you make it real? And so this ability of this movie to take something as abstract as the subconscious mind, and as abstract as the eternity of the now, and things like that. I mean, and you take that and you put it not only into real terms, but you put it into a story, weave it into a story, and make it real on a screen. I mean, that's just like, it's like a genius. I mean, there's nothing short of genius to be able to do that. And great. Yeah. So the time, I mean, time slowing, it's just such a far out concept, right? So how do you put it into a story? And the van keeps slowly falling,
that's what I was.
and you got like, you literally, that between the bridge and the water, you are talking about a matter of couple of seconds, if that. Seconds.
And they take,
yet, in all those other layers, you got time and time and time. It's just brilliant. I mean, oh my God. Oh, it's just hats off to that. To the ability of the director and the story writer and the screenplay, the camera work. Oh my God. I mean, because these are some of the other aspects of the movie, right? Which, we've been talking about, the message and the idea and all that, but there's also the screenplay, the camera work. I mean, that sequence in which she suddenly realizes sitting in a cafe that this is a dream, and now suddenly everything takes on as unreal behavior. The building starts falling and the sky goes up, and to put that into a visual and to make it real like that, I mean, it's just genius. It's just
Christopher
beautiful.
Nolan had written this with his brother, and I'm sure they must have had sleepless nights between the two of them to
You
be
bet.
able to come, and they would have fought and talked and I don't know what all. But
You bet.
Christopher Nolan had the complete support of his brother, and both of them put the story together.
Oh, is it?
Like I
Okay.
said, they took 8 years to write this.
Wow, that's I can believe it. I can believe it. Geeta, you had something to share or say? Geeta? Yeah, go ahead. Unmute. It's not unmuting. I don't know. Geeta, you had something to share? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sanjeev, actually, I haven't got the chance to see the movie, so I am just absorbing everything.
Okay. But now you can go in reverse, go into the layers with eyes open.
Now tonight, I'm really waiting to see the movie.
Absolutely. I think you will have a whole different perspective, which
Yeah.
we didn't have, because now you know so much more about it.
So much more, yeah. And the way it's explained, it's amazing. I'm just hooked to it.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I had a very nice time listening to it.
Thank you.
Great. Kailash or Chandan?
That's my mother. So that's my dad. So he's
that's your dad. Okay, great. So any comments from Kritika ji or Kailash ji? I'm sure you're very proud of your daughter, Kailash ji.
Yes, I am proud of her.
I'm sure.
She's very clear in her mind. Actually, she explains everything in mind so well. I'm surprised from where it came.
Half of it came from you.
I'm sure I'm sure you guys had something to do with it. With passing on that knowledge and bringing her this where she is. Great.
Yeah, she's expanding actually. We are like that. She's expanding like that.
That's the role of the next generation, to keep moving, to keep growing, right?
Yeah.
Great. Supi, you want to ask or say something? Supriya is also a psychotherapist. She's just starting her practice now. She's just completing her PhD, graduating in July.
She's in US.
And she's in the US. And our daughter, I introduced her in the beginning. But Supi, you want to say something about what you think about the movie, about what you heard, whatever, anything? And can you put your video on too, please?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to make one over here. No, I mean, yeah, it was really interesting. I thought, especially like people were saying, the last part always stuck with me. I haven't seen the movie recently, but I saw it a while ago. But that last spinning top was always the thing that stuck in my head for a long time, and I could never figure out what he was trying to get at. So I liked the interpretation of that at the end. And the projection of what we, earlier when you were talking about we are only responding to our projection of what we see out of other people, I think is really is useful and true. And I found that to be true too.
Wait, say that again.
The thing she was saying in the beginning about the way we interact with people, we're only responding to our understanding of that person, our image of that person. They might be a totally different kind of person, but if we're seeing them in a certain light, we're going to respond to that.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Exactly. Yeah. There's such an important lesson there, that you're really talking to your projection of the person and not to the person. And that can open up so many new ways of being with people. When you know that fabulous. And it's all this coming together, it's, whether you talk about psychoanalysis or spirituality or all that, it's all just converging now. Because at one point, this understanding of the subconscious leads you automatically to consciousness and to meditation. And the conversation on meditation goes on very easily and flows right back and forth between understanding ourselves and understanding our mind and meditating. So, things that were two separate things are now coming together. For example, spirituality and wealth, right? It used to be that wealth is antithetical to spirituality, but now the realization is that abundance is completely welcome, and it's okay to be wealthy and in abundance and yet be spiritual. So awesome. Great. So, okay. So I want, yeah, Nikki, great. Go ahead, unmute and speak, please.
Yeah, thank you, Swati ji, for the explanation. It was really nice. And I resonate with a lot of things you said because I'm an ABT practitioner, art-based therapy practitioner. So a lot of things you spoke about art and how it helps us. So one thing that I felt was the whole idea of inception. As you said, we've been, we grow up with ideas which are borrowed, which are put into us. So this whole thing of we are actually made, where he feels guilty that he planted that thought in her to start with.
Yeah.
So actually we are constantly either victims or because somebody has planted the thought in us, or we are planting thoughts in others.
I don't look at this as a process of victimization. I look at this process as a growth. So what ends up happening is, suppose I take a lot of my mother and my father's ideas. Now, the process of growth is for me to be able to redefine it. And that is why in the teenage, if you get the freedom to redefine it, it becomes your own values. Otherwise, there are rules you live by, right? So this permission to redefine. So you'll have to have a seed for the plant to grow. How you nurture it then becomes your responsibility. So it's a process of socialization, not victimization. So you grow and then you rediscover and you reinvent again and again. So if at all, like I just mentioned, being a mother was the most difficult idea to work with. I'll tell you a small story here. अपने यहाँ जो गणेश का story है, okay, where he has the head of an elephant. In that particular thing, the story was that Shiva told his people that whichever mother is sleeping with her back with the child, go and get the head of that child, right? So when my first daughter was born, every time I had to turn, I would just keep feeling, oh my God, I'm doing a wrong thing.
Right.
Only to discover over a period of time, these are ideas. They are not compulsions.
Exactly.
So that idea just needs to then become who you are. So
develop that awareness for it and break that, because she couldn't do that.
Yes. Yes. So that is the concept of growth, that you don't get caught in a limbo, but keep reinventing, keep rediscovering. There will never be a state that this is now real. There'll always be more and more and more to go.
Exactly.
So indulge with your own ideas.
Yeah.
Whether they are implanted in you or whether they are your own, but indulge with them.
Right. Because we continue to living in a limbo state where we just accept with the thoughts, ideas which are planted in us.
Yes. Right. So for example, I got married 25 years back. At that point of time, intercaste marriages was a huge thing. Right? You didn't do it, but then you break the mold. And now it's not only intercaste, internationalities, interreligion. If you go to see homosexuals, it's just become a very open space. Right? So yeah, you have to start with an idea. You can't start with a blank slate.
Awesome. So I want to just close with just a small experiential sort of experiment that we can undertake right now to examine this question of what is real, right? So how do we define reality, or what is our definition of knowing whether something is a dream or it's not a dream, right? I mean, the totem thing was the idea in the movie, but in reality, when we are dreaming, there's a way that we decide that at some point in the dream, oh, this is a dream, right? And you wake up and you come to this reality. And what is that process? How do we determine? And the question is, how do we know something is not a dream? So if we ask that question, if we ask that question to, oh, sorry, my video is off, she's saying, okay.
You're asking that question to me?
Yeah. So, sorry?
I thought it was more for the general platform.
No, I'm just rhetorically.
Right.
If, how do we determine? I mean, if somebody has a thought to share on that, we can listen to that. But I meant it more like, how do we know this is not a dream? What you and I are experiencing right now in this reality of so-called reality, how do we really know that this is not a dream? And perhaps look into the question of maybe it is a dream. And then the next question would be, whose dream is it if it is a dream? So what makes us so sure that it's not a dream? How we know or think that this is not a dream is the solidity of reality. If I hit this table, I feel this solid, rock solid experience of this table right here, and I touch it or I see it and I can smell it, I can look at it, and all these perceptions which tell me, hey, this is a consistent view I'm getting, whether I look at my visual clue or I look at my auditory clue or I look at my tactile clue, I get a consistent signal from reality, and which is what I then use to conclude that, oh, it's real. Because look, I can see it, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can smell it, I can hear it. And that's our basis for making that conclusion. So if we accept that experience is the basis for determination of truth, right? Not belief. So if you have two options, I either believe in this reality or I have an experience of reality. So I think we would all agree that between the two options, one being belief and the other being experience, we would choose experience as the more reliable barometer for saying that, yes, this is real. I experience it and therefore it is real, right? I mean, yeah, just show of hands maybe. Yeah, we would choose experience over belief any day to decide that something is real or not. So let's look at this thing called experience, right? So I want you to just look around you and choose an object that you're looking at. Okay, anything, whatever, just choose one. Choose one thing that you're looking at. So, okay, so you got some object in front of you that you're looking at. And for me, let's say I'm choosing this glass that's here. So this is my object, right? So everyone, maybe with something you can show or not, it's fine. Okay, everyone's got a glass. You got a phone. Okay, you got some object. Headphone for Sandhya. So you say this is real, right? You are, based on your experience, this glass is not an illusion, it's real. It's very real to you right now. So if we look, let's look at the reality of this glass a little closer. So what you are actually, your experience of this glass, which you are basing this on, is, everyone please be on mute. Okay. Is your perception of this glass. You are seeing this glass and therefore you are saying that my experience says that this glass is real. So the truth about this glass, the real truth about this glass from one perspective is your visual clue of this existence, the perception of this glass. Maybe call it perception, a combination of seeing it, maybe, you know, if I tap it, I can hear it, I can see it, I can touch it, it's cold and it's got a feeling to it. So there's a tactile and all kinds of, so lump all that into one word called perception. So, you know, there was this experiment that was done by, it's a thought experiment in a book called The Medusa and the Snail, where the scientist talks about a thought experiment where you put this brain in a vat and give it signals. You had enough electrodes to give it signals. The brain would not really be able to know whether it is experiencing reality or it's really just a brain inside a vat. It's not really seeing anything, just a bunch of signals coming from electrodes, and there's no reality. So the truth about this glass is not really the glass. At an experiential level, the truth about this glass is your perception of it is what is real. It's not the glass that is real. It's your perception that you can be dead sure of. You cannot be sure of this. What you're really sure about this is that I can perceive this glass. So the perception is real, for sure. Or to put it another way, without the perception of this glass, the glass actually ceases to exist. Its existence, its very existence is dependent on your perception of it. In the absence of the perception, the glass absolutely just vanishes from your reality. So there has never been an object in the universe, for me or for you or for anyone else, where something has existed in the absence of perception. Nobody has ever really experienced a glass as such in the absence of the perception of the glass. So the deeper reality of the glass is the perception of the glass. All right, you with me so far? Yeah. Okay, so let's take it one more step. Does the perception of the glass, what is the reality of that perception? What is that perception made of? What is the substance that creates perception? What is it made up of? And so let me ask it another way. Does the perception of the glass exist without your knowing that perception? You know the perception of this glass, and that knowing of that perception is what gives the perception its reality.
So,
in other words, go ahead.
So Sanji Mama, the thing is, there's one thing which we experience through our five senses, and there's another thing which is perception. So we all have the same experience of touch or seeing with our five senses. That's one thing. And perception is, okay, the glass is half empty and half full. That's perception according to me.
That's fine. Yeah. So
the reality is that we all have the same experience with our five senses. That
Right. Yeah. So you are talking about an interpretation, and you're right. Perception can be talked about as an interpretation. So actually, if you take even one layer above where we started, calling this a glass is an interpretation. Right? The name glass and this object being called a glass itself is an interpretation. It's a label that I've assigned to this glass based on my learning and my conditioning and my language. If somebody else in Africa will not call this a glass, they may call it something else. So there's that layer. So we didn't even start there. So I'm taking at the next layer, which is the objective perception, not the subjective one. The subjective one is even further up. So I'm talking about the objective common experience, which you and I and almost anybody looking at this object will agree. It's got a particular sound, it's got a shape, it's got a touch.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about objective reality, which we are so sure is real. The subjective one, we can agree that, oh, maybe it's half full, maybe it's half empty, blah, blah, blah. We may have differences of opinion. But I'm talking about this so-called objective reality, which we are so certain of its reality. That's the reality I want.
It's because we all experience it in the same way.
Correct, exactly, and which is why we give even more credence to this belief or this understanding that it is real, because I see it like that, you see it like that. So there's a consistency in the perception, but that's the objective reality that we want to sort of examine and hopefully see what is the truth. We are trying to get to the truth of that so-called objective reality. So going back again to a subjective reality, which is subjective, come to objective reality based on our sensations and tactile and so on inputs, and we all have a consistent view of it. So the reality of this object is really not the object, but the perception of the object. Kind of similar to what Swati ji was saying about, you're not really talking to somebody out there. You're talking to this projection of that person in your mind. And what I'm saying is that there's no evidence, in fact, of that person even existing, independent of that perception of you. So let's take it one step further, that it's not merely a projection of what's outside. Let us even examine or question the very reality of that outside entity to begin with, by saying all I really know, if I'm going by experience, all I really know is what I perceive. And what I perceive is this object. So that object doesn't exist. In reality, or if to be more truthful or more closer to the truth, is the object doesn't exist, the perception exists, or my impression of this object exists. That's for sure. You take it one more step now. The perception doesn't exist without your knowing it. If you didn't know that perception, the knowing is what gives the perception its reality. Knowing that perception. If you were not there to know that perception also vanishes, just like the object vanishes when the perception is not there. So in the absence of perception, object vanishes. In the absence of knowing, perception vanishes. In other words, this same perception happening to, let's say, somebody who has eyes but is not seeing. Maybe they are unconscious, or maybe they are dead. You put the same object in front of that so-called perception, that not knowing it ceases to give that perception a reality. So the truth of the glass is perception, and the truth of the perception is the knowing of that perception. So the only thing we can know for sure is that I know it exists. My knowing is the only reality. There is no objective reality out there. The knowingness is, or knowing, my awareness of that perception is what gives it, lends it the reality, the so-called reality that we give the objective world. So where does that leave us? I mean, where it leaves us is that what exists may not be what we think is what exists. We think that this world exists, and that is what the Vedas talk about being an illusion. The illusion is not that it doesn't exist. The illusion is that it doesn't exist in the form that we think in which it exists. So inside a dream, for example, I can have an experience of a glass in which the glass in my dream will feel as solid as this one, as transparent as this one, as making the sound like this one. And you know that the glass in your dream has no physical reality at all. So if we know, so merely having a perception or an objective perception of an object does not mean it is real. It is the knowingness of it which gives it the reality. So that spinning top at the end, where you don't really know, is that so-called reality real or not, is something I invite you to take to the next stage, which is actually accept or at least examine or explore that in your own life. That this so-called reality that we go about pretending it is so real may after all be simply knowing being projected as perception, perception being projected as so-called physical reality. And that all that really exists is that awareness of the object and not the objects themselves. And the same thing applies to all visual forms, whether all senses, and it actually applies even to the body. I mean, we can have a whole 3-day retreat on this subject of consciousness. But to put it in a brief sort of summary, is that the so-called self, the so-called body, the so-called mind also may not have any objective reality. It's simply awareness or consciousness creating, projecting, and it's like consciousness projecting and creating and receiving all in one loop is the only actual reality that we can conclude based on our experience. The rest is conjecture. The existence of the glass is a conjecture. The existence of the physical world is conjecture. So this could really be just a dream. This, what we so-called reality, could really be just a dream. And SSY, we know about nobodiness. Who am I? Nobody. How come? Because there is no real body. The only truth is consciousness, the one that you and I ultimately are. So there's something called lucid dreaming. I'm sure most of you will know the word lucid dreams. And in fact, this was even taking lucid dream to the extreme. The whole movie was lucid dreaming at multiple levels and taking it to the high, the extreme ends of what lucid dreaming could be. But lucid dreaming, to put it, I'm sure everyone has experienced this. You're dreaming, you're sleeping, you're dreaming, and then at some point, something happens and you realize, oh my God, this is just a dream. I'm dreaming. As it happened to everyone in a dream, that you wake up and inside the dream and say, oh no, this is a dream. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's happened to everyone. Yes, raise your hand.
Yes.
Yeah. It's happened to everyone.
Yeah.
So now there are two choices that you have at that stage in the game. One choice is to wake up, right? Is to wake up in your bed, and you wake up and say, oh, that was a dream. You have one more choice. The one more choice that you have right at the border of that is to re-enter the dream, but knowing that I'm dreaming. So now the dream let's say it was a nightmare. You re-enter the dream knowing it's a nightmare, not real. And now you re-enter the nightmare with the full knowledge that it's just a dream. And therefore the nightmare has no power over you anymore to make you afraid or to make you sweat and, make you upset or fearful. So you are now entering that dream again in that nightmare, knowing it's a dream. And so the first result is you no longer have to be controlled by the dream. You are in charge, because you don't have to be scared anymore of the lion or the tiger or whoever is about to pounce on you. It's just a dream. The second possibility is the ability to actually direct that dream. That says, hey, I want to dream about this. I always wanted to pet a lion. And now this lion that was about to gobble me, I'm actually going to invite it to be my friend, and I'm going to pet this lion. And you can actually do that to a certain extent in this process called lucid dreaming. Now, how does that apply to what the exercise or the experiment that we just did? Is that once you realize, or once you see that this so-called reality is also a dream, and who wakes up in that dream? Who wakes up in that dream is the dreamer, is the knower of all knowledge, is the knower of all perceptions, is you and I, and I at the deepest level, or the deepest definition of I is that dreamer. And if I wake up in this dream, out of this dream, I have two choices again. One is the choice of Vairagya, which says, I'm going to exit this dream. This world is unreal. It's a Maya. It's a dream. I want to have nothing to do with it. So that's the way of the Vairagi, who says, forget this world. Ye to Maya hai, chodo sab. That's one. The second choice you have is the lucid dream choice, wherein you re-enter this reality with the knowledge that I am the dreamer, re-entering my dream. Now this dream, this lucid dream called life, no longer has you in its claws. Just like you no longer, the nightmare in your dream no longer ruled you, this reality of life no longer has you in its claws. You are now re-entering knowing fully well that it's a lucid dream. And now, so all the monsters in our life, whether it's in the form of whatever the issues we are dealing with, you know, money, wealth, relationships, people, whatever, are no longer able to govern or control your reactions and your responses and your interaction with this dream world that we live in. That's the first consequence. And the second, even more powerful one, is of lucid living. Right? So we talked about lucid dreaming. Now you have the option to do lucid living. And lucid living is now creating this dream world as the reality that the dreamer has really dreamt. You know, all of you have done SSY and written, most of you have done it and written the My Ideal World, right? And everyone who writes the My Ideal World, sooner or later, in that definition of ideal world, talks about this dream world. And guess what? Almost to the word, we've seen thousands of essays, if not hundreds of thousands of essays. And everyone has more or less the same dream of how they want the world to be. So why is that? Because it's the same dreamer. It's the same dreamer. We are all in the dream of the same dreamer. And the dream of that dreamer is nothing but what you and I have written in our essays. And you can go back and look at it. And if you haven't done that, think of it right now. What is my ideal world? A world in which there is love, a world in which there is peace, a world which is clean, a world where everyone has the opportunity to live the way they want, a world in which it's beautiful and green. Every single person writes the same stuff because it's the same dreamer. So the choice that we have once this disintegration of this so-called solid objective reality happens, and it doesn't have to happen with some bells and whistles and a parade and fireworks. Guys, this is the definition of enlightenment. And I'm inviting you to start living as enlightened beings from this moment on. There's nothing else. This is enlightenment. Knowing that this so-called real world is not all that real. It's simply a projection of awareness, including my body, including my name, including my emotions, everything that comes and goes or is transitionary is simply a projection of that one eternal consciousness. And that is enlightenment, nothing else. And you already know it. And if you didn't know it yesterday, you know it today. And this moment on, live as enlightened beings. Declare yourselves as enlightened and start living the dream of the dreamer, which is your real dream. And the way to do that is very simple. It's simply know that, oh, this is just a dream. It's only everything I see, everything I interact with is simply my projection. It's just 3 steps to enlightenment. Every time you find yourself lost in the dream, take 3 steps and you're there. Step number 1, everything I'm experiencing is just my perception. Without my perception, it ceases to exist, it vanishes. Therefore, the reality of this experience is perception. This perception does not exist without my knowing this perception. Without my knowing it, the perception vanishes. And that 3rd step of who am I? I am this knower of perception. I am this knower of I'm the one who is knowing this perception. So in 1, 2, 3, you reach I. And that I is nothing but the universal I. So 3 steps, wherever you are in that dream, when you find yourself caught in the dream, take 3 steps back and you are out of the dream. Once you're out of the dream, re-enter the dream, because that's where the fun is. That's where the magic is. And that's where the game is on. So you reach the dream and re-enter the dream. And re-enter the dream as a powerful being, a powerful entity who knows that I am living a dream. And therefore is much more, much, 10,000 times more powerful and able to create what we want. You saw how in these layers of dreams, they were able to create cities, oceans, I mean, ships, air, whatever, in like a flash. Why? Because it's a dream. They were much more powerful inside their dream than they ever were in the higher and higher layers or in reality. In reality, the guy has to go and buy an airline before he can be inside a plane with complete control. In the dream, Zoom, anything, everything is available. Everything is mine. Everything is ours. So the opportunity with that understanding is to re-enter the dream as a lucid participant in the dream and as the creator of the dream, as the architect of the dream, and to now direct this dream called life however you want to, whatever your dream is. And there's no limits. Like Swati was talking about, it's only an inception. The creation is up to you. You know, how you want this dream to play out is all individual, and that's what makes it so beautiful. So rather than a guru or a guide or somebody telling you, hey, this is the way to be and this is create your own dream, whatever that is. But be in that dream, live that dream, create that dream. So let's see. Great. Yeah, we are approaching 10:30, which is where we wanted to end. So so with that, I think I'll open it up to what you understood or what you would like to share as what you got out of this whole event today, and whatever insights that you'd like to share and whatever understanding. And actually, it would be lovely if in the group you guys can all, after today also just post to me directly. Send me a message, because you can't post in that group, but post to me, send to me whatever your understanding or realization, actually even questions. I'd really love to hear questions from you about what we understood today, either about the movie at that level or at the deep level of life and consciousness. So all questions welcome. Nagarajan ji, go ahead. Yeah.
So I think, as anticipated, it's an enjoyable tour. Looked long, but I think it really flew like a quick thing. So I really enjoyed the company. I enjoyed the different interpretations of the movie and analysis. Thanks to Swati, thanks to Sanjeev, and thanks to all fellow participants. I think what we are attempting is great. Let's really keep it going.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Yeah, Azadiwen. Wait, unmute.
Sanjeev, the last
go ahead.
part of what you said is wonderful. In the 3 steps, I think I'm an enlightened person now.
Yes. Yeah.
I like it so much.
Great.
I want to do that. I wanted to have this 3 steps. Now
right.
I do it.
Wonderful. I mean, to be honest, we have so many definitions or misconceptions about what enlightenment means.
Yeah.
And it's just really a matter of seeing truth for what it is and declaring it as true for yourself. And that's it. You're done.
Yeah, it's a bigger picture. You are feeling so good. Great. Like the universal truth.
Thank you. Great. Wonderful.
Wonderful thing you've given us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? wants to share? Swati ji, go ahead, Swati. Okay. No, but I especially want to hear from you this the what do they call it? Uttarakhand, Purvakhand. The second half. Yeah. What, given your SSY background and so many other things, what is your take on what we just went through?
The things that you talked about, I'm feeling a little lost.
Great.
Okay, what my journey has been in a lot of ways, and I know there's a lot yet to come because there's still a lot of exploration and all that. I'll tell you, just sharing a small experience here. When I was training to be an RCRT teacher the first time, it was more a punishment. So we were supposed to go for being with Guruji program with our spouses. My husband didn't make it. So you couldn't go for the being with Guruji program, and the RCRT thing had happened. And at that point of time, while I always knew about uncovering your hidden layers and the potential and all of that, what I felt during the training was a lot of intense fear. So a lot of times I feel that, like you talked about the perception thing, if you permit fear also to also be a perception and not try to look at reality as to why you really have a reason to be scared of. So like we need to be cautious about the coronavirus thing, but doesn't necessarily need to mean that we need to be scared. So if we can look at that only as a perception, so accepting fear also as a perception is only a matter of growth. So I think that's where I just began to look at all emotions as a part of reality of our own perception. So I enjoyed being scared. I enjoyed being jealous. I really enjoy even the negative emotions that we say avoid. So I enjoy confusion. I enjoy jealousy. I enjoy all of that. And what I've seen at the end of it is there's a leap of faith that ends up happening. Emerging out of that negativity, that's helped me grow a lot more. So that's my experience. Everything we experience is finally a perception. So just look at it, observe it, let it pass. It's going to pass. You can't be scared forever. You can't be jealous forever. So it will pass.
Beautiful. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Yep. Great. Those, what was it? What I had? No. Okay, great. Anyone else? Last words. So we'd love to, so the idea is, today we looked at it from the point of view of movies and a story and a narrative. Tomorrow we may look at this from poetry, from physics, from quantum mechanics, or whatever. And again, we'd love to have you back. I mean, Swati, to join us on our other explorations also, and bring your perspective, because everything has multi dimensions. Like when we talk about architecture, there's something about sociology, there's something about anthropology, there's something about physics. So everything that we look at will have a dimension of even the mind and the psychology and so on. So you can always bring that perspective, that is one, and always take away the other perspectives that are brought to the table, right? So that it's a two-way street. So, and again, we'll also look at other movies, I'm sure, because you've given me a great list. So we'll look at other movies, other books as we go and do that.
Yeah, we can check the books also.
Right. Karishma, want to say something?
Yeah, it was all very, very good, and I'm really glad to see that the Discovery Cafe is actually totally working. Discovering all different these levels from all different aspects of life, and it's very cool. So good job.
Thank you. It's always good to get endorsement from your own children. Because they are your toughest customers. because they know very well everything about you. So they know all your weaknesses, everything, and then when they give the stamp of approval, then that's good. So your parents, because your parents can be biased, because they can, you're their kid, so you can do no wrong. But kids, different story.
You can do.
Sorry?
You can never do anything right.
You can, in fact, you can never do it. So, right, exactly. That's why when Karishma says, hey, this is working, then we are on the right track. So this was great. I think, 20 people, 22 people, I think that's a nice number of people to have where we can have enough time for each person to be able to share. Live guru, that's Harshad. He's a guru in the SSY community saying good night to everybody. So good night. And I think we'll end on this note. So I wish everyone a wonderful, continued, lucid dream called life until we have our next session. We'll announce that, the next one, probably in a couple of weeks. And do write to me with your questions, your learnings, your comments and feedback, and especially questions. I really want to hear questions, because I think the kind of people who are getting attracted to this activity are people who have, knowledge as well as curiosity. And we want to make the most of both.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I've been thinking of what you spoke.
Yeah.
So, you said the Vairagi realizes the same and he leaves everything and he walks away from the dream. So, is the person who goes back to the dream is also Vairagi?
Is also what?
A Vairagi.
In a different...
They are also Vairagis because they know that in reality this is nothing. But it's a Vairagi who is able to participate in the dream. A Vairagi who is able to create Aishwarya in the dream. So Vairagya and Aishwarya are both available. So there's a difference between the Vairagi who walks away and this Vairagi who returns. And the difference is that this Vairagi is only a Vairagi. He's walked away. The other one is a Vairagi who is creating Aishwarya. So it's Vairagya and Aishwarya are the two sides. And so this person who returns to the dream is able to hold both, hold both in his arms and contain both and live both.
So is it a question of ability or it's a question of choice?
Everyone it's a question of choice. It's not a question of ability. It's a question of choice, and it's also a question of understanding, I think. The Vairagi who doesn't understand or doesn't realize that the Advaita philosophy of India of neti neti, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, takes you to Vairagya very quickly, because it says I'm not these objects because they come and go and I'm still here. I'm not the body because the body comes and go and I still continue to have consciousness. So you come to this neti neti and the Vairagya stage very easily, and unfortunately in India, this is where the knowledge stopped. It didn't go back out. But there are branches of Advaita, which is the Kashmir Shaivism and so on, which actually went back into the reality, went back into the world with the realization. So we actually did one half of this experiment. The other half of the experiment we will do in another session. But that second half of but I'll tell you in brief, the first half of the experiment or the understanding is, I look at an object and I realize that I am not this object and that I am not that. The second half is going back and seeing that ultimately it is made up of knowing, that ultimately it is made up of knowledge. It is ultimately made up of awareness, and therefore is me. So I am not that is the first step. The second step is I am that. And so the Vairagi has not understood this second half. The one who walks away doesn't know the second half. He's not understood the second half and therefore walks away. The one who understands that I am that, I am you, I am her, I am this glass, can come back and fall in love with the glass, can come back and fall in love with you. And that is what has been missed by that Vairagi who walks away. But the guy who comes back with the love is also Vairagi, but with an added dimension, with an additional dimension.
Right.
Great.